Excellent. Welcome back to Modern Mystery Machine. My name is Harry Mitchell. I'm the community manager. I'm joined by Justin Alae-Carew. Say hello, Justin.
Hello.
And Sean Wenham.
Yeah.
And Sean, would you describe what your role is in Blazing Griffin with Modern Mystery Machine?
Yeah, so I'm the lead artist and at Blazing Griffin that kind of encompasses art direction and pre-production. So just working with the designers programmers coming up with the art style and how that's going to kind of serve the gameplay. And then just doing some kind of dev work and kind of overseeing things as they go along.
Well, today, Modern Mystery Machine, first of all, housekeeping, you don't know what Modern Mystery Machine is. If you're on the Steam page, you can check it out. It is a murder mystery, modern noir deduction thriller. I have probably the short bio memorized by now. I could probably read that out. And it's an isometric game. You can explore crime scenes and you can organize your evidence and you can chat with suspects and a lot of good stuff. And Sean is responsible for or helped with those kind of crime scenes that you witness and everything that you see and touch and all that kind of stuff. And today we want to talk about a little bit about that art, what it became. We have a bunch of concept art and old sketches and drawings and development history of all the windy turns that Murder Mystery Machine has put through and what it has become today. So, first of all, let's. So, if we can see the game, if we switch over to the Murder Mystery Machine game.
All right, get it started. And
let's
we can
test your.
we can see our intro. Actually, Sean, if you remember the process of creating this intro, how that was created.
Yeah, we actually used an external company called ISO, who are another Glasgow-based company. So we went to their offices and kind of just talked about the games. We shared some of our kind of inspirations and kind of connected on a kind of vibe. And they went with a kind of very like dark noir-y sort of like electro kind of 80s sort of synth music, and also that nice like glowy kind of pulsing line and stuff as it goes around. Like I think the detective wall, the kind of mind map became quite like a essential image to both like the gameplay, because that's kind of half of what you do in the game, and then just visually it was kind of a good thing to lean into. So yeah, they did a really great job with the kind of each kind of scene was almost like an image on the detective wall being like threaded together by that kind of laser. But yeah, I really love that intro.
Like it too.
Which is handy because you see it every time you
Yeah, we discussed on the last stream about how that's kind of an introduction to a TV style story, about how it introduces you not only to the kind of characters you'll be seeing, but also showing you a bit about the locations you're about to be seeing, because I think locations are really important.
Yeah, I think also like those kind of intros also in TV shows they're important because it kind of gives you like a few seconds to kind of shift from your day or the other thing you've watched or been like playing to kind of getting to the mood of the thing you're about to like watch or play. So I think especially with this originally being on mobile, it just kind of lets you kind of shift into this universe from whichever one you came to from that. So I think they're really handy for that.
Yeah, and talking of kind of mood and universes, the first thing I wanted to show was you Sean, showed me a bunch of stuff. Whenever we were creating a big project like this, there's loads of sketches and artwork and 3D assets, things like that. And I got to see all that stuff, and one that struck out to me is one of the mood boards, which I believe is the first image we have to show if possible.
Cool. I just brought that up.
Yes,
Cool.
and it looks like a whole lot of things at first, but if you start picking through it, you can kind of see what are we looking at, Sean? When you're creating a game, what is this thing we're looking at right now?
Yeah, like this mood board just started with kind of like David Fincher and that kind of sort of like the kind of nice dark vibes that you get in like Fight Club and Seven, Zodiac and stuff. And they're all very kind of American films, and then kind of branching out from that. Like this mood board you're looking at now is probably actually quite a few days work, not just straight Google image searching and Pinterest scrolling, but kind of thinking about things like different, like, I know a lot of just kind of coming up with different search terms to put into Google to kind of get that image you're looking for. Like with bars, like the kind of what we think of a dive bar now is kind of it's almost like a retro homage to what like an 80s bar would have been. So like um without any kind of pretense of like designing the bar to be seedy or a dive bar, like the owners back then would just, often it would be like a sort of just a middle of nowhere person kind of like decorating their like sacred space and like the kind of patrons coming in. So like trying to get that feel of like a like not a created space, which is kind of like a natural space, just required a lot of sort of image searching and reference gathering. But I think like this, and whenever I'm kind of talking to the art team, like before anyone starts like a new project, just reference is kind of so key. Research the whole kind of, if you're going to chop a tree down, like sharpen the axe or spend however long sharpening, whatever. It gives you so much kind of information and tools to use when you kind of sit down and paint or like actually like make the environment in 3D. So yeah, also it's a lot of fun just trawling through the internet looking for like good dive bars.
Yeah. I suppose not tone, it's also color. Like I'm seeing like a lot of I know David Fincher movies have that kind of that light green that's on a lot of things. You can see the neons in a lot of and the kind of the sandy nature of things like True Detective. I've spotted a couple things in there as well.
Yeah.
So imagine that also brings into how you approach a scene.
Yeah, often just like one or two colors can kind of be almost like the theme for a room. Like there's a couple of scenes in MMM like where just like a single red light source is kind of the like style of the scene. And in kind of like the shadows that makes in like the dive bar in MMM, there's like a pink and light blue light source coming from two different angles, which kind of creates that just very nice 80s kind of just blue and pink color scheme. Like it just
Totally.
you see it a lot for a reason because it's just really satisfying.
The bisexual colors, as they're sometimes referred to, like things like John Wick, things like that. Absolutely, big fan. And if we go back to the game, we can kind of see what the game is. What the game is now. It's now this. It's American. It's these kind of FBI style agents in this kind of dark bunker going through cold cases in 80s, 90s, unsure what term, what phase of reality we're in right now. It's not particularly nailed down. But of course, these games go through a lot of different development phases. And right now you can see that you've got all these glows and you've got the uniforms. And of course, the mood board you had has a lot of American things, Fincher, True Detective, all these kind of Midwestern, or the New York or LA, that kind of thing. But the one that struck me out was when is in the next image that we can show is that you had a bunch of things for when Murder Mystery Machine was going to be set in the UK, and I don't know much about how that development cycle happened, but it brings a totally different vibe to how the entire I think feel of the game. If I'm wrong there, but yeah, how did that go about, and how did it switch to the America, and how did you approach drawing for UK and drawing for US?
Yeah, well, like just in, I don't know if you can remember that far back as well, but like I think we had this idea for the detective game and the kind of mechanics we wanted, and we're like, okay, so like where do we set it? And like we're a studio based in Scotland, so like let's set it in the UK. Like this is kind of almost like it's not been done very much. But I think like as we started to kind of think about it, it's for like us in the UK, it'd be like cool to see like these like places we've kind of grown up around and like go to and stuff like that, kind of represented in a video game and stuff. But it doesn't like, I think for like most people around the world, America has like a very like escapist kind of desirable romance to it, which as much as I love Great Britain and stuff, like it just doesn't quite have that same like romance to it, especially like, like the kind of the sort of the grittiness of America as being like so heavily romanticized as well, like like, even just saying dive bar conjures like cool things, whereas like a kind of down and out pub in the UK, like whilst I might love that, it doesn't quite have that same sort of universal appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the actual bar in US, there's like all these kind of neon signs, and I think there's like a deer skull on the wall. So even
Mhm.
a dive bar looks really cool. Whereas in America, in the UK ones, you can see there's like a fruit machine, the kind of like dry
Yeah,
wallpaper. Doesn't really just have the same glamour, I don't think.
yeah, like the
Um,
sticky carpets and the karaoke corner, like in disuse and stuff.
but that is represent. Oh, I just noticed that you've got like the streamers on the
Yeah,
right
the
for like a
holographic.
karaoke night. That's the most. That's a great touch. I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it reminds me of when I was playing Mundawn. It's like a pencil drawn horror game that came
Mhm.
out this year. That was like set in this really specific location. It was like rural Switzerland in the kind of mountains of Switzerland.
Mhm.
Because I think that was where the developer like is has family and knows from and knows a lot about. It's really cool to have that specific location. But I think you're right.
Mhm.
I think with detective genres, it's much more fun to go for the people in detective coats going around neon and
Mhm.
dark kind of American locations. I think that's right.
Yeah. And I think like if we were saying to make a game like really about kind of something specific and local and kind of a story that could kind of only exist, in the UK and stuff, then like we should have kind of just gone for that. But like we weren't going for anything specific. We didn't have anything to say about like this region and crime and detectives and the law here and anything like that. So because it was just quite this universal, broad kind of story we wanted to say, like it just makes sense to kind of put it in the most like sort of familiar place, in terms of just anyone around the world knows kind of what that sort of East Coast America vibe is. You don't have to explain what this location is because you've just seen 100 films and TV shows with that location in it and stuff. So kind of
We showed
just
a mood board that has like 100 films.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly, yeah. Um,
Yeah, I do think that's, yeah, you've kind of nailed it on the head in terms of accessibility and kind of creating uh, that feeling, that tone of um, dark crime maybe sounds a bit too much, but you are detectives, and you're right that we weren't looking to tell a very specific story in a specific place, which we could do in the future, looking at specific crime in Glasgow,
yes,
where we're
yes.
based in Scotland.
Uh,
Um,
can we get a Taggart game? Contact. That's a
the
that's a
yeah,
extra.
the TV shows that you've referenced are references for people around the world. And I remember a couple words that you used to describe the tone of the game, which kind of struck with me, which was nostalgic authenticity, um, which I'm not sure if it's just two buzzwords put together, but it sounds really nice, and it
Sounds
kind
really
of,
cool.
you know, it is about it. We want these environments to be evocative. We want the setting to be evocative. We don't necessarily want to get mired into people looking at an English pub and not really kind of knowing the culture of karaoke, for example. Um, but yeah, I mean, the door's open, I suppose, for future games.
Yeah,
yeah.
culture of karaoke is one of the most important cultures in my opinion.
And
Um,
little packets of KP crisps on the wall and stuff. Just all that good stuff. Charity box um, by
yeah.
the pint handles and stuff.
If we can go back to the game for a second, I wanted to kind of talk about. I'm not sure where you're in the game, Justin. Actually, I need to
Just at the
actually check
start.
the stream. But for the locations, I just was curious about the development from start to finish about how you create one of the crime scenes, one of the isometric locations. Because right now we're in an indoor one, but you've got a few outdoor ones. You've got the light through the windows, you've got the fire, you've got all these kind of these assets around the walls, and of course the props that people have to pick up and look at that becomes evidence that are really important. Uh, and if we could have a look at, I might go out of order first actually. Uh, but actually, let's go straight on to two. This next image, which is I think still from the UK because you can kind
Mm-hmm.
of tell some pickups from the UK, um, and you can really tell that there's some kind of wheelie bins that might not look like that in America. I can recognize like that H sign is distinctly UK to me, and
Mm-hmm.
the keep clear, but this is one example of a process in drawing out the crime scene, because we've got you stop in a very rough sketch I've seen, and there are other images that I could maybe try and find that are like more detail, more added on, from like a rough wireframe to what we see now, a full-on working crime scene that you can navigate around.
Mhm.
So, what's the process between building a scene like this? How do you make something look pretty, but also have like a sense of geography where you know where everything is? Like,
Mhm.
what is that process like?
Well, like, I mean, firstly, it's that kind of sort of research and reference gathering, like I mentioned earlier, and stuff. And then there's kind of like two parts, like the visual, but then also the design. So, this concept at this stage that we're looking at was not kind of influenced by design. This was more of like the art team giving designers like, here's an idea for a thing, like what do you think, and then like that starts a discussion, like, oh yeah, like there's like an exit, there's like the razor rotating wire stuff, or like
Mm-hmm.
bins, like we can maybe do that, like, so because it was such an early stage in the project as well, we didn't even know exactly what the confines of the gameplay were. Like, is it just things in the scene that we can kind of analyze? Do we like infer things from outside of the scene? Like, because we show these very kind of contained dioramas, but like images like this are just like really good discussion points. It's kind of a lot easier than sort of like having that like blank page. It's like you can stand around an image and actually have these kind of conversations, and get down to kind of like small specifics with it. So um, after like this gets created, then those conversations happen. Also, then like kind of code becomes involved, and say, well, how can we build this? Like, what's the best way to kind of like organize that? And then as like the art gets built, as the design are kind of blocking things out and testing things, and trying out different story bits as well, like where the scene sits in the story. It's kind of, there's all kind of like different kind of concerns and considerations, sort of like pulling and adding to things as they kind of go along. So it's a very um nothing in MMM was ever a straight like, cool, we're just going to make like 10 rooms, like this is the bar, this is the park. It's like everything's a kind of constant conversation. um Even like, with the kind of the console and PC re-release and stuff, it's like new conversations and kind of revisiting like old things, like so yeah, it's just this kind of big conversation really, which is just, I think that's like a really nice way to make video games.
Great. Um, yeah, I of course it's much easier to show something like that than to describe it. I think this is something that evocative that you can just get an immediate grab of what you're going for there in these images.
Mm.
Um, I think in the next image, in image three, which might be able to show, is probably an example of a much stripped back version of that, where you've just got
Mm.
a pencil drawing of what this is like. Um,
Yeah, this we like I literally just remember this, looking at that. We were kind of like looking at sort of a microcosm of sort of all the different class structures within the UK, and it's like one sort of diorama. So we were kind of like having the sort of like the working class like pub next to like the hipster cafe, with like some like rich tenants above the cafe. So like kind of like lower mid upper kind of levels of sort of society, all like intermingling and having these kind of like around a murder. We just thought that was kind of an interesting thing, but um, whether we would have kept up with that, I'm not sure. But yeah, so that pub we saw earlier, is that bit, the back area we were just looking at with the kind of lamppost, is that kind of keep clear bit to the back. But yeah, even like this is just like a handy, like it takes kind of 10 minutes to kind of sketch out, and it's like, hey, what about this? And it's just kind of, again, just a good thing to talk about, instead of just, some people are more visual than others. Some people like need something in front to kind of talk about. Some people can't explain things as well. They just like have to do it with a drawing and stuff. So it just helps kind of different people express different things and resolve them.
yeah. If I could ask you, could we actually go to image five next instead of image four? I mean, skip ahead and make it complicated, but I wanted to show what you brought up earlier about this escalation from sketch to finished product. And in image 5, we can see basically a whole bunch of 3D assets. I'm not sure if this is all the assets that they require. I'm sure it's probably only a maybe small part of it.
Actually, I think that is, well, maybe like 95% of them. Like, I mean, there's walls and floors missing, but in terms of like props, that's all of them.
So what about 3D art and these props go into these scenes and make them more interesting than they are? Like, there's a lot of work that goes into making these look very nice and very ornate and adding character to a scene. Like, what about these props and the 3D aspect to a 2D sketch makes the crime scenes kind of come alive in a way?
Mm. Um, I guess like kind of um, having those nice kind of era and the kind of location details, like in the like the motel, for example, like having those kind of like pink toilet and pink sink, like you kind of used to get, and like having just because each piece has to be made by an artist, and that can take anywhere from like like an hour for like a scrap of paper that's on a plane to like 5 days for like a bar and stuff behind it and stuff. So if someone's gonna like go through the effort of making it, like it should be for something. It shouldn't just be a contrived list of like, we need these chairs, we need these things. Like each chair is like a specific chair, like that evokes certain kind of like the money of like the place it exists, like if it's mismatched, if it's like new, old. So kind of everything having like kind of connotations and giving extra dimension to the scene is very important. So like a lot of these assets were kind of just straight up plucked from old photos from the kind of like 80s 90s America and stuff, and then next to that will also just be actual like story requirements. Like there's like there's like a certain prop that's used in the murder, so like that will get made. But yeah, it's just kind of using every, because we're not a large team, so like everything we do spend time on kind of has to be for like kind of maximum impact, really. So
Totally. And if we go back to the game for a second, we can probably I think it might give you a different perspective on how these things look as a player. If you see how much work goes into these 3D assets, you start to notice certain elements of the background that you might have just completely ignored and actually show a little bit about the scene in a way, which I think is really interesting because you start to kind of expect a little more like, oh, like all the books are scattered around, like everything that's on his desk probably is there for a certain purpose. You can see all the campaign posters kind of hidden under things. It just, yeah, I totally think it adds like a certain character and a history to a scene that I think is really cool.
yeah, I think it's safe to assume that there's maybe like some video games that kind of get randomly generated, but anything that's not random is like in any video game is very meticulously placed because it just takes time, and like for certain people like that's their days and their weeks kind of thing. So there's just even like a bare desk has had some person thinking about like what's on it, what's not on it, etc. So, and like especially so with this, and because they're so contained, they are dioramas, like we can put a little bit of effort into like dressing and building and stuff. So but yeah.
Totally. I wanted to move on to one of my favorite topics, which is logos. I love logos. I'm a big logo fan, and I think it's Image 4 has basically a bunch of different ideas for where the murder mystery logo comes from, because it's not about really in the game, it's more about kind of marketing and all that. But I think it's really important personally. I think a logo totally sets the tone for what game you're going into. Like you can see right here, like the logo that's maybe in the top left compared to the bottom middle or the very top right are very different games you might expect. So were you involved in the logo process? How much
Yeah.
does the team get involved in the logo process, and how did that develop?
So this like Sean well, Sean McClory is our UI artist, and he has maybe shares your love of logos. So this was like the kind of the like done towards the end of the project, and it's kind of like the sort of icing on the cake bit for him. Yeah, it's like we got the game, so now it's like kind of brand hit essentially. And I know, like, I mean, so you're right. Like, whatever the logo is, it's like very specific to the game. So we were kind of like, well, how much of the sort of the work and like of explaining what the game is do we want the logo to do? So there's bits there where there's like a floppy disk and stuff like that. It's like, well,
Hmm.
it's set in the 80s or 90s, and like some of the guns, some of the kind of the magnifying glasses, like combining those symbols, um, playing with the font. Like we had like a lot of like fingerprint stuff, but that's kind of almost too forensic. We don't actually ever like dust for fingerprints in the game and stuff. So like we kind of like dropped that. The magnifying glass is, I mean, it kind of just gives the kind of context of like a different era, which is in 80s America and stuff. So that was kind of dropped. Um, and we in the end kind of we went for something a bit more kind of just like uh, almost like an 80s kind of like B movie film studio look, the kind of like the overlapping M's with this like kind of red glow around it and stuff. um but having a title like Murder Mystery Machine is just like that's just like pure like juice for
No,
a
yeah.
logo designer to have.
It's a very funky name, but yeah, now it has like you get the three M's, and it kind of links with the lines joining everywhere. It kind of has
Mm,
that the rest
hmm.
of the game, so I think it ends up pretty well. But I
Yeah,
understand the
yeah,
temptation to go for the crazy, wacky logos like that one.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think also, it's an interesting obviously all logos are challenged to represent the game, and that kind of red glow, setting there's a lot of tonal expression, I think, in the logo,
Mhm.
um, where which differentiates itself from other types of detective games. I think, Sean, you've mentioned the fingerprint, the magnifying glass. When you hear about murder mystery, that has a certain connotation. Someone in a particular type of hat talking to particular types of people, and this very much isn't that tone. So it was very important for us to kind of get across that tone, and that red glow, that neon glow, isn't something that really any other detective game, um, traditional detective game, um, really has that type of tone. And the second part is that mind map, which is central um, to the game. So kind of incorporating elements of that. Um, I I like it. I
yeah,
think I think it's
and
good.
yeah, I mean, I think Sean's totally right. Like, if it included this like fingerprint, then you might expect like scanning for forensic details, which isn't really a part of what the game is. The game's about, detectives don't do the forensic stuff often. They often send that off to a lab. The lab does it
Mhm.
for them. It's like about sorting through details and ideas, and building a kind of a case and a story. And I think that works a lot better than that.
Mm.
Great. Other than that, I wanted to eventually move on to um, the character design. So if we see the game for a second, I'm not sure where we are in the game. We're looking at this logo thing, but if we maybe look at what the characters look like now, we've got Cass and Nate, who often wander around and talk to each other and complain at each other uh, frequently. Um, but of course, it wasn't always like that. Originally, it was we're making a murder mystery game. Who are the characters? Is there one character or multiple characters? Who are these people? And from what I understand, it went through a few different development cycles. We can see in the game they've got these the FBI DCA jackets, District Crime Agency, the kind of the kind of blue shirt uniform style. But there are some wackier versions I discovered, which I absolutely love. So if we could show image 6, which is a few different iterations of. I know they always have these two characters. So was there always going to be these two characters similar to the archetypes of Cass and Nate, or was this just always the way?
Yeah, there was always going to be two characters. Just the I mean, it's kind of a trope, but it's kind of just endlessly enjoyable. Like the two detectives or cops put together, like one's like, oh, like I don't need a partner, and the other one's, well, like I'm your partner, so let's just be friends. And like,
Yeah,
they
one
like,
day from retirement, that kind of thing. The
yeah, like
classics.
it's like, I mean, it's like it's a trope for a reason because like no matter what the setup is, it's just an enjoyable arc. So we knew we wanted that from the beginning, but we had story wasn't written then. We had no kind of conceits of what the actual characters like who they were, what they did, what their like stuff was. But at the time, we were working with a Portuguese illustrator called Joanna Neves, and she just has like a really cool style, like really she's very like fashion minded and stuff.
Hmm.
So um, we just set her like a task, like just can you just come up with like just a really cool duo, like just have fun with it. Like there was no kind of like um uh it has to be this and that. Like just kind of have fun. Like
There's no restriction on era. I noticed as well. There's a lot of illustrations that are from just like they could be from the 1500s, they could be from like the
well,
70s. Like
so some of those images that you might have seen from different eras were likely from a time when we were playing with era.
mhm.
I know this like the image with the kind of the three pairs that was still very 80s as like the like the big wide shoulders and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, we have to talk about the kind of the Men in Black one on the right. That one's
Yeah,
wicked
I
cool.
think it's more like a kind of a Grace Jones vibe and stuff. But yeah, like I would have loved them so much. Like they were definitely like a real pair. I think like they seemed more like sort of kind of New York high society kind of like art class kind of characters, so not quite as like kind of relatable.
Sure.
But yeah, they were very cool. Like I mean, just the dude wearing like the big turtleneck and the woman with like the jacket but like nothing underneath. I think is like really nice, kind of also showing a bit of ankle. The two in the middle again, just like really fun, just fashion outfits. Like I mean, like it would have been nice to just go out in just this kind of like crazy direction. But I think do you have the image of like the first one of Cass and Nate?
Yeah, let's look at image 7 because you can see
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
a collection of four, and I guess like I think what I come down to it in the progression of here is it gradually becomes more based around what people view as a detective, a standard detective look, which is you can kind of see in the top left they got the tan overcoats. That's one detective look, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think like and like this is kind of like the route we always take is like when you start out, like go too far, like go like just be crazy, go as far out there as you can, and then like reel it back into like familiar ground. I think that's how like good ideas kind of really come. So this was like that like second round of like right, that was maybe too far, like but like let's kind of start to bring in more kind of like so like you'd look at them and know they're detectives kind of thing. um
And you can
and
definitely see that in if I could probably skip to image 8, which you can see. So eventually you settled on like what kind of detectives, because there's the kind of police detective, there's the I'm wearing a suit and tie detective, and there's like the FBI age special agent kind of detective. And that was the one you settled on for. What about this style was the settling point?
well, we so like when we actually with that previous image, that first image of Cass and Nate, when we saw that, we actually like kind of verbatim modeled them like that. There's an old version of the game where like Nate has this like little tiny blue tie and Cass has a kind of dress and stuff. um we just like really loved that pairing together, this kind of like super pretty boy, kind of like Adonis looking guy, and then kind of like cast this kind of sort of like know-it-all chain smoking detective. um like I just like instantly you just kind of you can just hear them kind of bickering almost, and then like kind of becoming good friends. So like we wanted those as characters, and then like that kind of informed the story. But the that next image you're on about, where like they're actual like actual cops and stuff, that was kind of we were just playing with like they're detectives, but are they like police? Are they like
Mm.
NYPD, or are they like, and we kind of went for this kind of fictional agency called the DCA, which is we don't actually specify, whether they're like government funded or private funded and stuff. So I
Or
wrote,
they're even with the police, they're just kind of like hanging out,
yeah,
unlicensed.
like we know maybe like I don't know, in a sequel we'll go into like the kind of background of the DCA, but like um we just wanted to have that kind of like uh sort of not necessarily law enforcement, but just like detective work kind of outfits. And I think even with these, like Joanna kind of had a lot of fun. There's like a very kind of like classic sort of like iconic uh, sort of Ray-Ban look to like the police outfits in some of them, and like a couple of like an extra belt buckle more than
Hmm.
you would really need and stuff like that.
Three belt
But
buckles.
yeah, like full Square Enix mode. But yeah, we did again like go with the more kind of sort of conservative sort of FBI windbreaker look, which is what they have in the game.
Sweet. Yeah. And I love that the nondescript police. I'm not sure if funded by government or just hanging out. But yeah, I think we mentioned in the last stream about how it's the kind of police work that's done in quote unquote real police work. That's more like looking at data and trying to connect dots and doing it on a desk, trying to call people, cold calls, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Whereas I think with the other detective looks, we mentioned that it might look a bit more like you're going around shooting people and doing crazy stuff, where it's just a
Yeah,
bit more.
yeah,
It looks a bit more grounded this way, I think. Um,
yeah. Like you seen like Bored to Death with Jason Schwartzman, where he's kind of like running around New York as like an amateur detective.
mhm.
Like I mean, it's just like a fun show, but like I think some of the early designs were a bit more kind of like it's just like a hard reference point to kind of grapple with, and it would require like backstory and a lot of explanation. Whereas you kind of throw like an FBI windbreaker, and it's like, oh, they're like a
Yeah,
real
yeah.
detective. That's they're professional.
They have a job. They're
Yeah,
like
they're paid for this.
they're not
So
just some weird vigilante in a big
yeah,
coat.
like you just read too many like Raymond Chandler novels or something.
Totally. We could probably go back to the game now and have a little look at the game before I bring up the last image because
I think just to add to that, it kind of calls back to our purpose here of creating familiarity. From the start, from the first scene, you're thrown into a murder, into a case. Um, and we kind of wanted players to hit the ground running, really, to start deducing what happened. And we don't necessarily in games have the luxury that we do in other media forms like TV, where you can have a very interesting um, um, getting to know you phase for the detectives and exploring everything about them. Um, and with TV, you can go into the non-traditional. You can introduce new ideas, new characters, because you have time and presentation techniques to make that interesting. I do think that games offers a particular type of challenge where we don't want people to just be, reading lines of text. We want them to be playing. So we did want there to be a kind of familiar aesthetic as you go into to start investigating, really.
and the last image I wanted to show was the final image, which is this comic booky. A lot of comic book assets here. I wanted to just get some context from this because there's a few different styles here. You have this. You mentioned this is what one of the original styles of Nate was. It has the blue tie and it has the
Mhm.
tan overcoat. So is this just to try and figure out a tone for the game? Was the game a little more wacky at this stage? Like,
Like so that actual outfit is in the game. Like you can unlock that. But this like as Justin just mentioned, like kind of getting the story across. Like it's to have two characters talking to each other is an expense just in terms of animation, in terms of kind of actually like setting those scenes up. And also, we knew quite early on that we weren't going to have voiceover and stuff. So as soon as it becomes like just a pure reading exercise, you kind of you have to be careful with the amount that you put in there. So we this was just a part of a kind of experimentation process of like, so how are we going to like tell the story bits? Like, are we going to have like cutscenes where um, we just look at things in 3D? Like, are we going to have the characters like emoting at each other? Like, can we resolve this just with illustrations, like comic book style things? Because I think it's like a wall of text is one thing, but like, 6 comic book panels with that same amount of text dispersed around is a lot more kind of like palatable. So we kind of went down that route, but in the end, we kind of settled for just like an in-game camera kind of moving out of the isometric view. Because it kind of let us use those 3D scenes that we'd already made and kind of show them from different angles that you don't get from that kind of high up isometric angle. And be it kind of, it kept things in that same tone. Like it's kind of, it can sometimes feel like a separate thing to kind of be pulled out and look at a comic book of like a different style to the actual in-game 3D stuff. So we wanted everything to feel very much like in these scenes and in this world. So and also like it's still, there is an overhead of like just creating those like raw images and illustrations and stuff. So we didn't go down this route, and we kind of went for a more like in-game kind of like uninterrupted sort of approach, which is really nice.
Great. Thank you very much. If we can probably go back to the game, that's all the burning questions I had for Sean. Thank you for humoring me.
Cool.
And I'd like to thank everyone for watching this so far. If you're interested in Murder Mystery Machine, you can play the demo right now. If you're watching this live, up to the 22nd with Steam Next Fest. If you'd like to wishlist it when it's eventually out, you can go down there and click wishlist. It'll give you an update. It's totally free. It's one click, super easy. You should do it. And if you want to follow us for more updates above me, there's an ad name. It's Blazing G Games. And if you want to tweet us, you can use hashtag Murder Mystery Machine for all your thoughts and prayers and all that kind of things. I don't know why I said prayers. Please don't pray to us. It's a very strange thing to do. But that's everything from me. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Sean.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks. Ciao for now.
Goodbye.
Bye.